And welcome to The Verdict. Mick Cornett with Kent Myers, where every week meeting interesting people and dealing with topical issues. And a lot of people are talking about basketball, and the Oklahoma City Thunder's off to a decent start.
They are off to a thundering start. They're just doing great. And we're going to meet today the television voice of the Thunder, Brian Davis, who's kind enough to join us in between ball games. And going to tell us about what's going on with the Thunder and what's going on in his life as a broadcaster.
Brian Davis, the play-by-play voice of the Thunder, coming up today on The Verdict.
A greener planet, cleaner air, a healthy economy, national security, a smaller deficit and a stronger dollar. Green jobs, better jobs, energy independence, warmth and light and transportation. These are the reasons Chesapeake champions natural gas every day.
Wilsey, Meyer, Eatman, Tate. We're accountants. We do taxes, business valuations, estate planning, and consulting. And we're right here in Oklahoma, working with the owners of small and medium-sized businesses. Steve Wilsey and Stuart Meyer have the resources and the experience. Wilsey, Meyer, Eatman, Tate in Oklahoma City and Tulsa.
And welcome back to the set of The Verdict. Mick Cornett with Kent Myers, and Kent's going to introduce today's guest.
Today we're really pleased to have join us Brian Davis, the TV voice of the Oklahoma City Thunder. He's been occupying that position for the last couple of years. Brian has a broad background in radio and TV broadcasting, having represented and been the voice of the Seattle team before it came to Oklahoma City. He's done NBA games, NBA finals, NFL games, Big Ten basketball games, done just about every MLS soccer games, done just about everything you can think of over the years. He's much too young to have had such a long history, but we're sure glad you'd give us a couple of minutes here today to join us.
Great to be with you, Kent. Mick, thanks. And somewhere in the back of my head, I hear my father saying, "And how come he can't hold a job?"
Well, you've lived all over. What do you think of Oklahoma City?
Love it. And you've heard me say this privately, Mick, but the people here are just unbelievable. You know, the way that we've been received, and I'm not talking about professionally, that too, but the way that my wife Judy, our son Evan, who is 16 years old, have been received in this community is just unbelievable. As a matter of fact, our across the street neighbor, one day I had to tell him, look, if I seem a little bit funny when you invite me to dinner, which is about twice a week, if I seem a little bit funny about that, it's not you, it's me. I'm still trying to get used to this, but it's been, and then so many other pieces of what we do, it's so much easier. You know, you're on the 50-yard line here in Oklahoma City, so it's much easier to get places. People come see us. We've had more visitors here than we had 9 years in Seattle. So it's been terrific.
Well, how's the 16-year-old getting along? That's a pretty rough time to be jerked out of where he was, probably comfortable.
You know, we were actually very fortunate. Evan's kind of one of those kids that never met a stranger, and so he And we actually came here when I was working with Seattle, and the Hornets were here. Evan he accompanied me on a road trip, and so he had been to Oklahoma City. We'd done to the tourist thing, gone to the Cattlemen, seen the memorial, and he liked it here. So the one thing that was tough was he said, I'm fine with coming, but by the time I got hired last year, he had already started school back up in the Northwest. So Judy and Evan stayed back there for last season and got down here this summer, and thank goodness for that. But he's having a great year in school. He's got a good group of friends that he came home the other day, dropped his books. It was, middle of November, and he says, "Oh, I love it here. It's 75 degrees." Yeah, so the weather's good too.
Yeah. So how'd you get involved in sports broadcasting?
Honestly, Mick, by accident. When I got to college at Northwestern in the middle 70s, I just didn't like the tone of the campus newspaper. And I had been, my journalism teacher in high school was an old line newspaper woman from the old St. Louis Globe-Democrat, and the business was done a certain way. And I just didn't like the flip attitude that they seemed to have on the staff, Daily Northwestern at the time. So I went to work for the radio station instead, and I got exposed to both news and sports. Wound up when I got out of college, I started as a news guy and worked on the news side for 10 years. But then at one point, a dear friend of mine, Dave Ennett, who's the sports director at WGN Radio in Chicago, he was offered the sports director's position at the all news station where we had been together before. And he said, if I go, I want you to come with me. So, and it was just kind of like that.
Chicago's a tough market, though, to switch careers. I mean, that's a pretty competitive place.
Yeah, and there's always somebody that's willing to tell you when you made a mistake, too, that's for sure. But the nice thing was, I'd been exposed to sports a little bit, kind of bits and pieces here, produce a game, pull an air shift. So I wasn't completely foreign to that side of it, and was always a sports fan, of course. But that was... I have never, ever, fellas, been able to predict the course of my career. Now I say that, and I sit here also and tell you I hope this is my last stop, but it's been fluky almost at every turn.
Well, I noticed in your resume something that I didn't get a chance to mention, but you were covering the Bulls or working with the Bulls when Michael Jordan was there in his prime. How was that? That must have been really exciting.
It was amazing. I mean, it's when you're in it, and you guys know this, Mick, particularly your broadcasting background, sportscasting. When you do this for a living, it's no longer the job that most guys will give their left arm for. It's your job. Yeah. And so you have to take a certain kind of detached view of the thing. But when you're in the middle of it, I mean, Jordan was such a transcendent figure. Everybody understood what a special time this was, not only for us personally, but for the team, the city, and for sports in general. It was pretty good.
Well, but, I mean, there's been a lot of great basketball players who rose to a certain level, but it seemed like, they failed occasionally. And it seemed like Michael just didn't fail his share of the time.
Only early on. Only early on. I mean, I went back and looked last year. He had some ungodly number of 40, 50, 60-point games. But early in his career, most of those 40-plus games that he played, Chicago lost. It wasn't until a guy who doesn't get enough credit for the Bulls' success, Jerry Krause, their general manager, went out and got John Paxson, the three-point shooter, and Bill Cartwright, he of the sharp elbows. And when he made those two deals for those guys, that's when that team became what we all know it to be.
I see. What's your favorite sport?
I don't really have one. I was raised at Memorial Stadium in Baltimore as an Orioles fan and as a Colts fan. I'm very fortunate, very blessed to have seen Johnny Unitas play, because to me he was the best that ever was. And some of the guys that he played with, my 8th grade gym teacher was Roy Hilton, the defensive end out of Alabama. And that was back in the days when those guys had to work off-season jobs. So exposed plenty to the Orioles, the Colts, the minor league hockey team, the old Clippers in the Civic Center. Didn't see too much of the Bullets, who were playing in Baltimore at the time. So it's kind of funny how this has all worked out. But I love them all for different reasons, and now throw soccer into that mix, because the one championship ring I have comes from Major League Soccer in the Chicago Fire.
Let me change the subject a little bit. We see women now as sideline reporters or on the side of the court. We don't see very many women play-by-play announcers. Why is that?
You know, I've got to tell you, I just don't think we're there yet. Ken, it's as simple as that. As a matter of fact, I'll tell you that I had
It's a process. Then.
Yeah, it is a process. And you see a handful, Pam Ward comes right to mind at ESPN. And there are a couple of people, Doris Burke over there, who I think does a fabulous job. I've worked in the past with Nancy Lieberman, who ironically is now going to run the D-League team outside of Dallas. Very capable people, good pipes, good delivery, great presence. But as one programming executive told me, quite frankly, in a private conversation back in the Northwest, we're just not ready for that yet. And you know, being a child of the women's revolution, which I am, that bothers me a little bit to say that, but I think that process is yet to unfold a few levels.
Your broadcasting partner is Grant Long, and he's a former player. And so, I mean, you come from a long career in broadcasting. He comes from the court to the booth. How did that relationship work?
You know, it's funny. The very first time we met each other, there was just, and this is a matter of fortune, I think, just good fortune. We just clicked. We just like each other. We get along.
That comes across, by the way.
Thank you. And the nice thing, I mean, we had never met each other until the night before the press conference where they introduced the broadcast team last year. And so, I mean, I had seen him play, not much, but I'd say I was aware certainly of who he was and his roots in the Midwest, and I was in Chicago for all those years. But sometimes things just click. And with Grant, it just clicked. And sometimes you can't do that. I mean, you know, you hear the stories about guys that don't like each other. Yeah. You know, and never speak unless they're on the air together. But that's not the case with us.
That'd be tough.
Yeah, it would.
We're going to jump to a break. Brian Davis is our guest. He's the play-by-play broadcaster of the Oklahoma City Thunder. More with Brian after this.
I'm Mike Larson. I'm an artist, and I am Chickasaw. We were fortunate enough to start doing more and more work with the Chickasaws, largely because of Bill Addertubby. We developed, with his help and with his graces, a series of paintings on the Chickasaw elders. I would interview them, I would do sketches, we would talk about their history, some of it phenomenal, and then we would come away from that, go home, and I would do paintings. First thing I will look at when I look at a person is their eyes. You look at their eyes, you look at their hands, you can tell everything you need to about a person. These people portrayed to me strength and character, filled with an integrity and a joy of life. The wonderful thing about it, aside from the paintings, is the way that it brought me back into the Chickasaw family. It has made me more Chickasaw. It has made me more Chickasaw than I ever thought I could be.
Home values are down in some states, but not in Oklahoma. Oklahoma's home values have increased 4.2% during the past 12 months. Unlike some states where home values have decreased as much as 20%. Good thing you're in Oklahoma. There may be real estate problems in some states, but there has never been a better time than now to buy or sell a home in Oklahoma. One of the most affordable states in the country, Oklahomans are buying and selling homes every day, and an Oklahoma realtor can show you how. Good thing you're in Oklahoma.
That land next door was a mess. Take more than a lawnmower to revive that land. I heard the oil and natural gas people was cleaning up old oil sites, and it wouldn't cost us a plug nickel. Oh yes, sir, it was quite a revival. The whole church showed up, want to make a playground for the kids. It sure is a blessing.
We are back on The Verdict. Mick Cornett with Kent Myers and our guest, Brian Davis, the head voice of the Oklahoma City Thunder. Kent, where to now?
Well, when we broke, we were talking a little bit about Grant Long, your partner. You guys, I guess you travel with the team all the time. You guys probably spend a lot of time together. How does that work?
You know what's really funny? Grant and I, it's one of those things where it's like a good, solid professional relationship where you like the guy, you respect what he's about, and we respect each other. We actually don't spend a ton of time together on the road, and I think part of that's just the way that we're wired. I'm going to get this shot in. I think he's still got the first dollar he ever made. And so dinner out on the road is not. But the other thing is that Grant and I are both kind of, we're kind of homebodies. My idea of a good time on the road is to go and go out to dinner and then go back and retire in the hotel room with a book. And he is exactly the same way. So it's funny. It's just, and it's not because we don't like each other, care to spend time around each other. It's just how it plays out.
Let's talk about your most memorable moments in your broadcasting career. What jumps out at you?
Well, I mentioned the ring. The Chicago Fire of Major League Soccer in 1998 became the first team in North American major sports history to win a championship, and they won 2 that year as an expansion team. And I was their television guy there, and I got a chance to call their second championship, which was not the league, but the club championship. Right. So that was pretty cool.
So an expansion team that won the league championship.
Yeah, that was amazing. And you know what's really funny is that I see some similarities as that team gelled. I see some similarities between the Fire and the present-day Oklahoma City Thunder. It's kind of a feel thing that you can feel coming before you can actually see it. It's pretty cool. But that was one.
Okay. Most memorable game in any sport?
When I was doing radio for Northwestern, we were at Illinois, our rival, and we were down 3 touchdowns going into the fourth quarter, came back and won. So that was pretty good. Yeah. And there are always ones that are pretty compelling, some for reasons I can talk about and some for not. But those are 2 that come right to mind.
We did not talk about the Seahawks, but how many years were you in the NFL?
I was there for 4 years, and actually my last game turned out to be their first playoff game in quite some time. And it was in Green Bay, which was perfect. Having spent a lot of my adult life in the NFC Central with Chicago and the Packers. It was a pretty special time, and the game went to overtime. It was kind of one of those, like the Lakers game here a few weeks ago, just hard fought and tight all the way, and then to overtime, and then it actually ended on an interception return for a touchdown for the Packers. But that was pretty cool.
I got to ask you, you've done both NBA Finals work and Olympics work.
Yes.
If you had to sit here today, and I'll give you a choice. Brian, you can do Olympics this coming year, or you can cover the NBA Finals. Which would you choose?
I'll take the finals. I'll take the Thunder in the finals. Because those things, the Olympics are cool because they only happen every 4 years. There is a certain aspect, and this goes back to
it's Summer Olympics, I guess.
I've done both, summer and winter,
Wow.
and they both did the 92 games in Albertville, France, for CBS Radio, and then for Sporting News Radio, I did the summer games in Atlanta in '96. This goes back to it's a job, not something a spectator sport for you. The Olympics are like Groundhog Day, the movie Groundhog Day, where you wake up and every day is pretty much the same as the last in terms of your routine and your preparation. The finals, it's a spectacle. I mean, there's just energy in the building and electricity that's really hard to duplicate.
To me, the big difference would be the pronunciation of the names of the players at the Olympics. In the NBA Finals, you're going to know how to pronounce their names.
Well, yeah, although, now with the ever-increasing international flavor of the league, that's not a slam dunk anymore either, Mick.
I guess that's right. Was that an issue in international play-by-play? I mean, just being able to pronunciate the names?
No, and soccer, presented some challenges.
I see, yeah.
Hey, in football, in the Pacific Northwest, calling Pac-10 games for FSN Northwest, there are a lot of Pacific Islanders that they come and play ball in the Pac-10. So, try Brandon Manu-Maliuna a few times quickly. So, yeah, it's like that. So,
Let me focus on the Thunder. What kind of preparation do you have to do in advance to do a Thunder game?
There's no simple answer to that because you're always kind of gathering information, Kent. My game day routine is actually pretty simple. When we're at home, I get up at 7 o'clock in the morning. I read the newspapers from the city where our opponent is from, just to make sure I haven't missed anything on them. And then I actually have a software that I use to put together my game boards. And so, I get that going and get all the stats, and then I just start putting together my charts. And it's a note that I grabbed from a newspaper clip here, or a stat that that sometimes a bell goes off in your head and you start looking for a trend, like statistically.
Well, let me interject, because
Yeah.
you could have someone put those charts together for you, but you feel like it's part of the learning process to do your own charts?
I'm one of those guys where, if I don't input it myself, then it's probably not going to stick. So it's a combination of things, and it's just a lot of it, just like when we're actually on the air, a lot of it's just instinct. You go with the most important thing that you can think to communicate to your audience in that moment. And there's a lot of stuff that's on those charts that never gets on the air.
A lot of very interesting players on the Thunder this year. Just a nice article a couple of weeks ago about Etan Thomas and kind of some off the court type activities. He seems to be not quite the rough enforcer off the court that he is on the court.
Right.
Of the Thunder players, who has surprised you the most this year in the way they have played?
Wow. Not so much maybe surprised, but I think Cephalosha, especially as a defender, and he's come back shooting the ball better, but he really stands out. Westbrook, when he's managing the floor game as well as he can in the way that he needs to be for this team to win, he's been spectacular. It's funny, the guys though that you become fond of sometimes are the guys that never even play, and maybe this is because I'm a little bit older now, but Ryan Bowen from the University of Iowa, Ryan and Etan and Kevin Ollie, who, Ollie's an amazing story because he was raised in a really bad neighborhood in Los Angeles and yet transcended that. Gives a lot of credit to his parents for keeping him on the level in those times. Wound up getting to the University of Connecticut and has had a fabulous career. Guys like that, the Bowens, the Ollies, those are guys that I root for because I've always kind of looked at myself as an underdog too.
A couple of weeks ago, the Thunder just had a magnificent game against the Magic. And even though he got his points, I thought the performance of our big guys against Dwight Howard was just exceptional.
That was the game, and I felt it coming. That was the game, gentlemen, that I turned around and I said to Grant, I said, this team can win any game it plays. Couldn't have said that a year ago. Might not even have been able to say that during preseason this year. But this team can, when its mind is right and when it executes the way that they've been trained to do, this team can win every game that it plays. Now, that said, they're still young. There's going to be peaks and valleys, inconsistencies, but we're headed absolutely in the right direction.
Well, does the inconsistency come from inexperience?
A lot of it is inexperience. A lot of it is maturity, Mick, and I don't mean that in a way to denigrate the players. But when you're young, you don't know what you don't know. You've been a winner at every stage along the way. Nick Collison tells the story his first year playing in Seattle. That team won 52 games, pushed San Antonio in the second round of the playoffs, and he thought it'll be like that every year. And Nick has not been back to the playoffs since. So what it comes down to, and these guys they do have respect for the game, but there's a certain level of respect that you need to learn to pay the game. And I think we're still in the process of sort of acquiring that respect, how hard you have to bring it every night.
Mm-hmm. The role players seem to be playing bigger roles this year than perhaps in the past. That's got to help.
Thomas gives you, as you mentioned, that element of toughness. Collison is still there and now has added a mid-range jump shot that he is making consistently, which makes him a more dangerous player. James Harden, the number 3 pick in the draft, the Thunder now is deep enough top to bottom that they have the luxury of bringing him off the bench. And young guys often need to do that. In his case, he played zone defense in college. Well, they play a lot of man here, and that's a hard thing to get a handle on at game speed. So he can watch, he can study, and they can bring him along at a more reasonable pace. So yeah, the bench, but everybody's doing something.
We have run out of time. Brian Davis, thanks for coming on.
Had a great time. Thanks, fellas.
Yeah, your schedule's packed. Thanks for giving us some of it.
Brian Davis, the voice of the Oklahoma City Thunder. Kent and I'll have a final word after this.
All children deserve a life of hope and love, but sometimes they experience a life of pain, neglect, and abuse.
When that happens, each child deserves all the quality assistance and representation that can be offered in our legal system. For more information, call 23-CHILD.
Oklahoma Lawyers for Children, helping to bring hope and love back to the lives of abused children.
The good life comes naturally to Tulsa, where nature's beauty is matched with an eye for aesthetics. A legacy of neighborhoods graced with lawns and landscaping and handsome homes. A place that seems to have patented an ideal lifestyle. Bank First is loyal to the quality of life Tulsa assures its citizens, to the priority placed on education, culture, and growth. Loyal to builders who transform raw land into residential charm. Developers who see opportunity and add vitality to Tulsa's economy. Bank First serves both enterprise and private lives that need a loyal partner. It's how we help nurture this city's very good life. Bank First. Loyal to Oklahoma. Loyal to you.
The Journal-Record is pleased to be a sponsor of The Verdict. The Journal-Record, since 1903, the best source of Oklahoma business news and legal information. And for almost 30 years, Oklahoma political, government, and business leaders have turned to the McCarville Report for accurate, reliable, inside information. Visit the McCarville Report online.
Welcome back to the set of The Verdict. We are wrapping up an episode with Brian Davis, the voice of the Oklahoma City Thunder.
Yes, a very fine sportscaster and a fellow that's doing a great job for our Oklahoma City Thunder.
We have some website information to pass along. You can always go to nba.com, but if you want specific information about our team, oklahomathunder.org is a good one to head to. And of course, our website will give you information about an upcoming show on The Verdict or an opportunity for you to suggest a topic that you'd like to see us discuss. Our website is theverdict.tv. For Kent Myers, I'm Mick Cornett. We will see you next time right here on The Verdict.
The preceding program was produced exclusively for the Cox Channel.